First ever, 3rd gen Camaro bolt-on spec chassis. This is like our Everest. It was the one we thought couldn't be done. Did the Fox body, had this one in the pipeline shortly after. Complete bolt-on chassis for 3rd gen Camaros. Falls in our spec line, but it deviates quite a bit from what the spec line is. Biggest challenge on this car is retaining as much of the unibody as they possibly could. We went into this looking at it much like the Fox body spec chassis. We wanted to minimize the floor modifications, keep them to almost zero, retain the structure from the unibody of the car, but make a chassis that completely bolts to it and takes care of every shortcoming of the 3rd gen Camaro, and there's a lot of them. We wanted the best possible performance and the easiest to install chassis humanly possible. So we clean slated it, man. This came from an absolute clean sheet design. Wanted to retain the whole front sub rail. As soon as you get into modifying this, you turn into a major project, right? A lot of strength in this front unibody, a lot of strength in these rails, strength in the wheelhouses, and strength in the upper apron. So we retained all that. And in order to do that, we came up with a clean slate suspension design. Nothing from our standard spec series crossed over as far as suspension components or suspension geometry goes. We didn't want to make any concessions, didn't want to make any sacrifices. Control arms, more in line with what our fast track stuff is. So this is a little bit of a hybrid when you look at the suspension components and the suspension geometry. Goes away from our standard single lower control arm, moves into a lot more fabricated, TIG welded, tubular components. So the upper and lower control arm, very unique. Lower control arm's tubular, and we shift the lower bars forward of the steering rack. All the adjustability is done on the bottom. Eccentric mounts on the lower make it super easy to do your alignment from underneath the car. Shares some fast track components as far as the sway bar goes. So it's our forged sway bar arms, uses a 1 1/4 inch 250 wall spline sway bar in it, and the upper control arm on it is tubular as well. That's where the biggest challenge was. Standard fast track geometry didn't cross over either. Spec geometry wouldn't work, Revo geometry wouldn't work. In order to get an upper control arm to package in this platform and not disrupt this upper rail, we took the Roadster Shop forged C7 knuckle and we took the upper ball joint and we flipped it around top. So the most unique thing about this suspension package is that it utilizes a uniball upper control arm, and instead of that mounting from the bottom of that knuckle, the A-arm is sitting up on top. Bit of a challenge, but meaning that we manufacture this ourselves, we were able to machine that knuckle to accept a sort of a trunnion mount. That's a stainless steel piece that threads in, and that engages with the uniball on the upper control arm. So the upper control arm, it's designed around a CNC machined, like a Y piece, right? 1018 mild steel, goes into 1 1/4 125 wall tubes, and that ties in to the upper structure, which when you look at the top down, you'll see 2 really bitchin' machine parts. Those allow you to remove them, lower this body over the chassis, reinstall them, and then slide your control arms in through the outer portion of this unibody. All it requires up front is cutting yourself a little window that a great templates provide by the Roadster Shop, and boom, that thing is installed. Looking through the engine bay, you get a better view of how this upper control arm interacts with the body. Kind of lets you see why we did what we did. So there's an upper brace that's machined that welds onto the top of these frame rails, and that lets these upper mounts, which are CNC machined, bolt directly on. They register into that. Socket head cap screws hold them in place, and the upper control arm passes through this little window that you cut in the factory wheelhouse. The spread on this is really interesting because we're moving that upper control arm now to the top of the C7 spindle. Get a huge spread in your upper and lower control arm, which makes for just an incredibly predictable and smooth handling front suspension. Engine packaging. Just about every popular motor packages in this platform. LS motors, no problem. LT motors, no problem. Small block Chevy fits exactly like it did from the factory. Big blocks, we do not accept tall deck big block in it. Standard big block does fit, not really recommended. However, this package, in my opinion, it's not really a big block car when you're building something like this. So LS mated to T56, perfectly comes through your factory shifter hole. These cars are unique. There's a lot of space under the hood, so they're great for things like turbo applications, superchargers with front feed throttle bodies. Your LT4 fits under the hood. A lot of the low profile LS blowers fit under the hood. Ton of space out in front, so serpentine drives, no problem. We've gone through, we've done the engineering, we've ran through just about every one of Wagner's serpentine drives. Any motor package, there is an option out there to make it complete, from supercharger, serpentine, transmission, totally thought out to make it easy on the end user. The other challenge on this, it's a strut-based front end. Where do you put a coilover in it? It's pretty easy when you just look at it and say that we'll cut things out of the way, but when you want to retain structure and make the install as easy as possible for the end user, we were scratching our heads and we figured out that with a little bit shorter stroke coilover and a little bit of an altered motion ratio, we're able to make a billet upper mount that packages that coilover, just threads the needle and puts it right in the existing spring pocket. You'll see next to the coilover, the factory mounts for the lower cradle that bolts in there. We utilized them for factory mounts on the new Roadster Shop chassis. So, poly bushings, full energy suspension bushing kit, the entire chassis is isolated from the body. We lean a little bit on the unibody structure on this, but this particular chassis has some tremendous strength. So unlike some of the other unibody cars where you've got to make a few sacrifices to straddle some rails, this chassis on itself is unbelievably rigid. Now when you add it to the existing unibody of the car, you get an absolutely stout piece, which is a huge improvement for these cars because these cars were notorious for flexing, bending, not real rigid pieces, especially with T-tops. All right, moving back into the chassis. This is where it gets tricky, how it interacts with the body. So when I say it's a bolt-on, I mean it's a bolt-on. We say no cutting, it's just trimming. Let's call it trimming because there's a few things that were in our way that we had to get rid of. Two of them are just the tail end of this front unibody. So where these front rails come in and blend into the body, there's a small section that gets removed. So drilling a few spot welds, a little bit of slicing and dicing, and out that comes. Any of the modifications done to the body of this, they don't get into the actual interior of the car. So anything that you're modifying, it's it's under the car. It's not going to impede into the carpet. Factory carpet kit, factory tunnel, factory trim panels, all still usable. We kind of accomplished two things here. By getting rid of this, we were able to solve the age-old problem of how do you get dual exhaust into a third gen Camaro. Now, if anybody knows these cars, you know that it's almost impossible to package a full tube header, and it's even harder to get true dual exhaust down each side of the car. Getting rid of this section of the unibody opened up a tremendous amount of space to make this adjustable trans mount, and now we can package 3-inch exhaust around just about every popular automatic and manual transmission. You get into some of the bigger transmissions, the 10Ls and things like that, gets a little challenging, a little bit more trimming, but it all still does work out. To pick up some more mounts on this chassis, we added a mount up in the front that ties into the original torque boxes of the vehicle. Another area that requires a little bit of trimming and a little bit of welding, Roadster Shop provides 2 nice brackets and a good template to install those. So you're leaning on the great strength that comes from the front section of that torque box to get your front cowl mount in place, building just a tremendous amount more strength into the total package. As you move back, being that there are no mounts in the car to accept a chassis because it didn't have one, we provide you with a mid mount right here that perfectly contours to the floor. Drill a few holes, bolt it in, and boom, it lines up perfectly and accepts another energy suspension poly mount. Brake lines are well thought out, ran through the complete chassis. Now when you get into the rear section here, we notch a small section of the unibody rail, which allows us to package this exhaust cross member. Ties the whole chassis together, again, focused on making this an incredibly stout package. Rear suspension. Probably one of the coolest things on the back half of this chassis, no doubt about it. It's a Watts link in the back. The 4-link on it, it solves a few problems as well. We're moving these lower bars inboard, so compared to that original factory suspension that was in here, limited your tire fitment. Nothing's in your way now. You can fit up to a 355 tire on here. 355 requires some wheel tubs. 275 fits comfortably in those wheelhouses. Spline sway bar in the back of this as well. It passes through the lower portion of the shock mount, which creates a nice rigid brace tying the 2 shock mounts together. 4-inch stroke rear adjustable coilovers on the back. So you'll see that they package in here nicely. Another area that does require a little bit of trimming when the body's installed. Again, that's something that we provide great templates, great schematics. This chassis is just thoroughly documented. Spent a tremendous amount of time trying to make this as easy to install for the end user. So you got a little bit of trim in there, and boom, that thing drops right on. And the actual housing on this is 57 inches hub to hub. So moving it inboard, front and rear tracks are both considerably narrower than stock. So it gives you much better wheel fitment, a great outer lip on a wheel, 5-inch backspace on a 9.5-inch front wheel, roughly 5.5-inch backspace on an 11.5-inch wheel on the back. Our favorable tire is a 325, so 325, a little bit of trimming here and there, but you can package it no problem. The gas tank, you'll see, it's going to fit in this factory void. So where the original tank was, we're still packaging a tank in there. Stainless steel 16-gallon tank. It's a Roadster Shop design. Fits perfectly within the chassis, perfectly within the floor, zero trimming required. You actually get a little bit more volume out of it. Fastens to the chassis. There's mounting provisions already built into it. Great package. You can send it right up to your existing filler neck. All that just blends together to make more space in the back of this car. So traditionally, these cars are also very difficult to package a muffler. It's usually a 1 in, 2 out. Long muffler that runs kind of horizontally across this car. What we've done is open up some space in the back to where it just gives you a lot of muffler options. You can package a traditional muffler up and over the axle housing, uses a heavy-duty Strange 9-inch, but we have our high clearance option on it. So something kind of exclusive to the Roadster Shop is we built just a little bit more clearance in this axle housing, and that's available exclusively on Roadster Shop chassis. Lets 3-inch dual exhaust go up and over the top of that axle and out the back wherever you choose to run it. Your rear mounting provisions, there is a mount right at the back of that chassis. You're provided with a little C-bracket that welds in place. Cage nuts are provided for everything, so you'll see these little finger tabs that hang out of there. There's compliance built into each and every mount on this, so as tolerances differ, vehicles have been damaged over the years, guys who worked on vehicles over the years, we built a lot of compliance in, so there's adjustability as that body goes on. You know, handling on this, we focused a lot more heavily on being performance-based. So over the years, a lot of the Roadster Shop products have been heavily focused on like touring cars for the sole purpose being ride quality, drivability, things like that. It was my kind of hunch that, you know, I often look at cars as how am I going to drive it? And this particular car just likes, it looks to me like you want to drive it kind of like you stole it. You know, it's was a performance-based car, not a great one, but stylish car, great lines. It looks like it should be going fast. The initial customers that inquired about these all wanted to do a little bit of autocross stuff and wanted a better handling package. So you'll see that everything from the front of this chassis to the back of the chassis is really heavily focused on performance drivability. With that, we're not sacrificing anything from a ride quality standpoint. So ride quality, always a focus on a Roadster Shop chassis. This is just kind of the best of both worlds. This chassis, we're doing pre-sales right now. So engineering is done. Took us about 9 months to get through the engineering. Prototype is installed on the body. Everything's flushed out. We're going into final production. So the chassis is available for pre-sale. Get your order in before these things pile up.